Still Huntress, and this is a video response to Indigo Speaker's video on racism and privilege. I hope you'll forgive me if I look at my notes. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything that I want to say. And this is my first video to YouTube, and Mike over at Indigo Speaker knows, if anyone knows, I am completely technologically useless. So if this actually does get onto YouTube, it's a personal triumph or a sign of the apocalypse. So hopefully personal triumph. I'd hate to think that a sign of the apocalypse would show up on YouTube in a polka dot cardigan, but we'll see. Indigo Speaker was talking about white male privilege and how this all came about, and made some really interesting tie-ins to the long history that we have, going back to Greece, going back to Rome, of power, militaristic, uh, social structures, the conqueror and the conquered living side by side. And I think this has a lot to do with schism in our society. Um, and I think that schism in our society is creating a fear base that is interwoven to our society to a degree that it's part of our society. Um, I think we all agree that prejudice is a manifestation of fear, and that's a strange thing for us to be feeling toward immigrants, toward people that we categorize as other, considering our standard of living. I mean, how many times do you hear someone talking about those immigrants coming over here and taking our jobs? And they have a house and a car and air conditioning and computers and so much shit they have to keep it in a storage locker. At what point do you have enough stuff? At what point is your lifestyle secure enough that you're not afraid anymore of people coming over and taking your job? And the answer is obviously it's not a question of how secure you are in your job. It's not a question of how secure you are financially. It's a question of how secure you feel as a human being. That's all that's left. It must be that. And why do we have such a fear base here? And that, what got me thinking about that was Mike's point about the conqueror and the conquered. Because societies are here, their function around the world throughout history. A society gives you your context as a person. It binds you to your neighbors. It gives you an identity. But, I mean, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm not a psychologist. But it strikes me that our culture, and I'm talking about Western culture, teaches us to despise what it teaches us to aspire to. And I think that's fucked up. I do. Money, we're taught to want affluence and to make it and to have the nice car and the nice house. And every rich person in television, in films, in books, in our social media is depicted as a shallow, arrogant asshole that nobody would want to be. Someone who doesn't know the value of hard work. Beauty. I cannot stand in the grocery store in line without being inundated by every magazine cover telling me how to get rid of my wrinkles and get slimmer and the greatest hair dye and how important it is to look like Angelina Jolie. And yet we're also inundated with the messages of how shallow that is. Every beautiful person is depicted in media as petulant, childish, stupid, shallow, and useless. We're taught to want an education, and yet highly educated people are often portrayed as out of touch and inauthentic. Um, we're taught to want fame or power, and yet again, these people are demonized. I don't see how that kind of a culture could ever result in a population that is secure in itself, knows who they are, knows what they want to be, is centered, and has a strong identity. We have built an entire economy around making people insecure about themselves. Our economy depends on it. 15 years ago, it was ring around the collar. Every detergent commercial was ring around the collar. Then people started washing their necks apparently. And now in the last few years it's suddenly everyone's teeth aren't white enough. People make up shit for us to be worried about, to wear us down so they can sell stuff. Our entire culture is built on that. And that cannot help but make a culture that is perpetually insecure, perpetually afraid, perpetually thinking that everyone's better than me and everyone's got something that I don't have. And I'm on shaky ground. My castle is built on sand. And I think prejudice is one of many symptoms of that. It can't be anything else. We are obviously animals and we're programmed um, to imprint on stereotypes. A mother deer doesn't teach its doe to get to know every wolf individually because, some of them might be nice. No, the animal part of you wants to identify the enemy. As spiritual beings, obviously, it's our responsibility to be able to step away from our meat brain and assess whether it's doing us a service in any particular instance or whether it's really not. If it's being a little bit monkey, it's okay for us as spiritual beings to say, you know what, I feel that and I know where that's coming from and I'm going to step away from that. And it's not easy, but it's part of being a human being. And that is, I think, where a great deal of bigotry comes from, is the fact that it's lasted into the freaking 21st century. I mean, obviously, there's an element of habit to it. I'm sure there are people from my grandparents' generation who, to this day, wouldn't understand what the big deal is about a black Sambo salt and pepper shaker. There is an element of, well, that's how it's always been. But I think underlying it all, bigotry is about conformity, as Indigo Speaker said. And conformity is about fear. And if we, with all the bounty that we have, are still afraid, then it has to be something systemic. It has to be in all of our culture and all of our society. And as far as practical things we can do moving forward, how do we deal with this as people? There's no perfect answer to that. We can't deconstruct all of society as much as we would want to. It's really hard if you are with an abuser, under the same roof as an abuser, to ever truly be a whole person, a healthy person, and living in our society. We are, in essence, living with the abuser. Our society, our culture is our abuser. And we've adapted to our abuser. And until we can separate ourselves from it it's going to there's going to be a limit as to how much we can grow without society transforming. And that's a scary thought to most people. Most people know on an inner level how dependent we each are on this culture that we live in. We can't make our own clothes and grow our own food, and I wouldn't know how to hitch a horse to something. We depend on millions and millions of strangers, and we know it. And we will guard this system out of fear again. But if it takes its root in personal fear, a sense that you are personally not safe, then surely that gives us some guidance about going forward. If we can help each other to feel full, feel secure, help each other, help the people around us, friends, neighbors, support them in what they want to do, support them in their aspirations and their completion as beings. I think the symptoms will take care of themselves if we can address the sickness. And as far as a white American guy talking about this, why is that? Why does that make you feel uncomfortable? Indigo Speaker was saying that being a white American guy, male, talking about this, supposedly white males have the privilege. But what privilege is that? If you value what we have been indoctrinated into valuing, then I suppose then that's a good thing. But just because a set group of people has been given the inside lane to acquire that which we have been trained to want, whether they want it or not, whether that's who they really are, whether that is a true expression of their happiness. That's like saying a woman is completely free and has all the privileges she wants, as long as she takes this very specific role that tradition has said a woman should want. Well, no. So if that's true, if that makes bigotry true for me or for a person of color, um, that then it's the same for a white guy. The truth is, as my favorite comedian Eddie Izzard likes to say, men do not have complete clothing rights. A woman can walk down the street in a dress or slacks, but a man can't walk down the street in a skirt unless he wants the shit beat out of him. Men do not have total freedom. A man does not have the freedom to just say, you know what, I just have to go into the bathroom and cry for a little bit. He'll be laughed at. There is a jockstrap burning march that needs to take place. We had our bra burning. The men have to claim their freedom as well. It'll take a different form, I'm sure. But absolutely, it's being prejudiced. Anyone who tries to put any human being in any kind of box is being prejudiced, and prejudice is fear. And unfortunately, fear is the inevitable result of this schizophrenic, mixed, fundamentally conflicting messages that is the heart of our culture. The heart of our culture. When you get down to brass tacks, it's nothing is as important as winning. Winning isn't everything. You have to want to climb the corporate ladder. Guys who climb the corporate ladder are self-serving assholes, and who'd want to be that smarmy guy? Absolutely at the heart of it, our culture is divided, schizophrenic, however you want to say it. I'm not an anthropologist, like I said. But I do think that bigotry will be healed by us healing each other on a much deeper level. And hopefully at some point that will carry over into our culture and we will no longer be living in the house of an abuser anymore. So that is my video response. And so far there are no 4 horsemen on my doorstep. So I'll wait till tonight. And if the moon turns to blood, then that will be bad. But if not, then my personal triumph of putting something on YouTube has not resulted in the spontaneous destruction of the universe, and I may do another. So thank you for putting out some great videos, Indigo Speaker, and maybe I'll see you again. Blessed be.